Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our April 2021 Salon. Linda Rutherford is our judge, and Linda developed a passion for photography at the age of 12 when her aunt gave her a Kodak Instamatic camera. Through her teen years, she photographed for yearbooks at school. Now she mostly concentrates on nature, but she challenges herself to go outside her comfort zone. She's a member of the Women's Color Photo Club, a past president of N4C, and has been a judge in the metro area since the early 90s. She's currently writing a photo book about her retirement trip to Antarctica. Welcome, Linda. Thank you for judging our salon.
No, thank you for asking me.
So we'll start with the assignment images.
All right, and Jill, did you get my reply about you were missing a couple?
I proofed it against my list, so I'm hoping that we now have them all and there aren't any problems.
Okay.
If so, I've got everything here that we can hopefully straighten that out right away.
Okay.
We ready to
And
go
I have
here?
the images on. Yes, go ahead.
I'm ready.
Our first image is in the fives.
Jeez.
And as I said
This one is
earlier,
called.
I tend to reserve these for things that they were really pushing the envelope of the category. And for old, I really wanted to reward people that pushed at this. Sepia is about the only thing that is old-ish about it. I did enjoy the placement. I would have preferred a profile versus a butt shot. I think a black and white overall with the high horizon works well, but if you had asked them to look off at a diagonal to their right, I think that would have been more to draw me in, whereas right now I'm just going to the butts. Okay, next.
Okay, next we have old postcard.
This one would have scored much higher in like a pictorial category. I just, just putting a border around it didn't make it old. I thought at first maybe it was a postcard that they were doing something to, but then I noticed the COVID masks in the background. So it is a newer image. I really enjoyed the following line, and the expression on this woman's face is priceless. Had this been entered in Pictorial, I think this may have been an award winner. But it just was really pushing the assignment envelope just to put a grungy old border around it.
Okay, here we have Venice Boulevard.
You're back to the postcard. There we go. I will agree that both Venice Boulevard and the trees are very old. However, most of the image appears modern looking. And I might have let it go a little bit higher, except that there is nothing in focus here. I think we're looking at motion blur from the from a moving car. I suspect was where the photo was taken. In terms of composition, I really like what's going on with the moss overhead being backlit and the tunnel vision taking me down to a vanishing point. That was well done, but if you're going to shoot from a car, I found you need to have a really fast shutter speed, like 1/2000th, and then it will most of the time be sharp. All right.
Okay,
That's the last.
moving on to the sixes now. We'll start with the first six is Hello Auto Club.
The bandwidth. There we go. Okay, I really like the diagonal line going from the back to the front. And I liked making the car prominent with the flat tire very visible. I felt overall it was just a little flat and it needed some punch. All right, next.
Okay, next is Salon Cemetery. Salon, sorry.
I'm waiting for it to come up. Sorry. Okay, here we
There
are.
we go.
I like that the photographer brought out texture in the building, and the door being ajar leads me in. I thought that the bald sky kind of overwhelmed the image. And also I would have liked to see some more depth of field so that this prominent gravestone in front could be a little more in focus. Being short to the ground, I've noticed that the lower you get to the ground, the more a building will tower up and over that horrible sky. So had you been lying on the ground, there's a possibility you could have gotten rid of most of the sky, and some more depth of field would have brought the gravestone out some more. All right, next.
All right, stained glass in the chapel.
Okay, I like the slanted view. If it had been shot straight on, I feel it would have been somewhat static. I really like the effect of the overlay on everything but the bottom left. This shadow right next to the corner wants to, my eye just keeps wanting to go out of the frame. Had it been more like the upper or even the lower right all around, I think that would have suited the image better. All right, next.
Okay, we're going on to the seventh, or no, we're not. Sorry, Sunset
Yeah.
at the Bridge is the next image.
Okay, Stillwater Bridge, definitely old. I like that you had some pedestrians on it, and I like that you waited so that you would have a full moonrise with the sunset lighting. Editors or copywriters would like a lot of space in the sky, but it's less successful in a salon. I would lose quite a bit of the sky and think more of a panel crop. And if you brush some dehaze over the water reflection, you can really bring out that quite a bit more. And I think you would find it even more pleasing. The bridge, the moon, and the moon's reflection form a triangular composition, so that keeps the eye moving around the frame. All right, next.
Okay, now we're on the sevens, and the first image is all transistor.
We're waiting. There we are. First of all, the rule threes are always pleasing to the eye. I like that the photographer, if they weren't stacked this way, stacked them this way so that they're offset. Had they all been equal, it would have been more static. This way the eye moves around the various dials. I like having the bright red in the middle for my eye to rest on. I would have
Maybe you
wished for
should
some
turn your
more depth
camera
of
off.
field.
Maybe that'll improve.
Okay, just hold on. Okay, try that. Of course, now you can't see my wild hand gestures. Okay, I felt that some of the knobs could have been a little bit more in the depth of field. So I would have liked to seen a little more depth of field on this image. Okay, next.
Okay, the next image is Bukja Tikai.
Okay, I really enjoyed the lovely texture in the wood Nice depth of field, acceptable sharpness all the way back from fore to background. I like that you have 3 windows, a single window, and then 3 rocks. I suspect the photographer put them there to balance that. What I thought would have made it a little bit stronger is I felt like there was too much space on the left. I would have liked to have seen maybe cropping just outside that dark gray streak to the left of the window, because right now the rocks are almost an afterthought. If I hold something up so that that's as far as it goes, the rocks are a little bit more prominent. All right, next.
Okay. Dairy Barn one is next.
All right, I thought that for the most part, the exposure is well handled. I really like the placement of the phone. There is no doubt that it is the subject matter. There is an upside down L composition with the post and the rafters, with the phone being mounted on a third spot and the cord dangling down. Possibly could have touched up some of those glowing whites in the background, but this is one that came down just because of the I had too many up above. All right, next.
Okay, this is Granddad's Skip.
There should be something about mining.
I'm sorry, I skipped it. I am proofing Death Valley mining ruins. I'm sorry. My paper slipped.
That's okay. We don't want to even. This is another one that I have to reluctantly move down. What I did really enjoy about it is the curving of the hills all around, and then leading my eye down to the opening to the mine, and then the rocks leading to the rust area, and then the path leading me back to the diagonal scree, or whatever you want to call that, that takes me back up to the top. I thought things were well exposed. It could have potentially used a little bit more foreground so that the rocks aren't as crowded. I had to get really nitpicky because I had way too many in the acceptances, and I had to move some things down for this and just leave what I felt were the stronger images. There was great depth of field in this also. All right, next.
Okay, now we have Granddad's Skip.
Yeah, the exposure is well handled. There's detail in almost, what? Yeah, this is still a 7. There's the good exposure from highlights to shadows with just the blacks being a little blocked up. I like that the reflection is 2/3 of the image. And I enjoyed the ombre effect. It just, I felt that this black swirl in the corner did give it a little bit of a place for my eye to rest. It's just that I felt it wasn't as eye-catching for a salon. This is the sort of thing that will probably grow on you on your wall with some sort of saying, but it's not as punchy as maybe a salon would look for. I think it would need another element. All right.
Okay, this is Mayan Sculpture.
I felt this was a very creative way to present the statue. I enjoyed, at first I thought, well, maybe it should be something opposite the background color on the color wheel, like a blue opposite the yellow, but I kind of enjoyed that there were greens and yellows in there. And I enjoyed the floating head. You could emphasize that more by putting a drop shadow effect on the head layer. I did think it could use a little more space on the bottom. It was felt a little crowded down there. All right, next.
Okay, Montana Grain Elevators is next.
All right. All the elements lead the eye to the main subject. You got the grasses blowing in towards the grain elevator. You got the clouds swooping in towards the grain elevator. It may have been a combination of exposures to cover all these hot spots, but some of them are still a little on the hot side. I like the repetition. That is another compositional element that will bring a person's eye into the frame with the two elevators, but they're connected by the overlap of the outbuildings, so it seems like all one subject. And again, I just had to make some hard choices. I thought there were just enough hot spots that I didn't reward this one over some of the ones that I did reward. And black and white was also a good choice for it. Very unifying. All right, next.
Old Trains at the Old Roundhouse is next.
What happened to the pocket watch? Yeah, okay, it's pocket
No,
watch.
this is
I'm sorry. I am holding a piece of paper over this spreadsheet, believe it or not. Okay, old pocket watch, sorry.
Yes, it's old pocket watch. I enjoyed, like, all the elements are sharp. I like the way it was placed in the frame, although I could have preferred the stem to be maybe more at the 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock positions rather than the noon. But I enjoyed the circle within the circles within the circles leading me in, and then the red jewel-like areas as a way of holding the eye. There are a couple of little fuzzies on your velvet that I think you could touch up to improve it in terms of the impact for a salon. Right, next.
Now, Old Trains at the Old Roundhouse, not schoolhouse.
All right, this has great leading lines. It leads me right in, and then you've got that. I'm not sure if it's a building or a line of cars at angles, but they stop me from going all the way to the horizon and lead me back to the building. I thought the colors were well handled. I like that there's not a lot of sky showing, but the middle front has almost so much white in it that it seemed to be too much blank space. I would have liked the photographer to go back another day if necessary and just photograph that car with more of the fun stuff on the roof showing and maybe swap it back in because it just blended into the snow on the ground a little too much. All right, next.
Old Desk is next.
All right, the photographer really handled the light nice. If they used fill light, or a bounce back in, they did balanced it with the outside nicely. For the most part, I felt the desk was really well set up with the curtains on either side. I did feel that the cup could have been moved either out of the picture or further in. It's sort of like falling off the edge. And I would have liked to have seen enough depth of field to at least get the headline a little more sharp. All right, next.
Okay, our next image is Once Round.
There it is. All right, square crops do tend to suit circular images very well. It counteracts geometrically. And the bicycle wheel being bent like that, it's almost like a Fibonacci spiral going on into the hub. I thought that including that little plant rather than weeding it out gave an extra resting point for the eye, and there was adequate depth of field, pretty good exposure range. I felt the rocks in the upper left could have been darkened some more. They're kind of a little hot. They may
So
have been
we
dark.
can hear all the wonderful things that you said.
You can't hear me. Oh, I'm sorry. Hopefully maybe on the recording I was gonna just suggest, besides darkening the upper left, brightening the hub a little bit. All right, next.
Okay, next is Slave's Doll. You're coming through fine on my recording, Linda, or on my hearing.
Okay, good. Maybe people can go back to the recording and hear all my meanderings. All right, I really enjoyed that this doll is set up to be on cross diagonals. You've got her body going one way, her face going another, and then yes, this is Slave.
Yes.
And the walls are joining to meet. I like that the eyes are looking off the other way, because this makes a lot of X's in diagonals, and that tends to pull your eye in. I would have wished for a little more depth of field. I would have liked to have had the whole doll included in the depth of field. All right, next.
Okay, we've got Train to Nowhere.
All right, the depth of field is good. I really enjoyed the building window being used as a frame. It helps add depth. And then you have the receding lines with the telephone wires, and they are backlighted a little bit so that they tend to stand out some more. I felt the texture in the sky added a little more interest, but I think the whole image could have used a contrast boost to try to get some more richness in the darker colors. All right, next.
Worn Out Old Caboose.
Next.
Yeah, she's coming. There it is. Okay, again, a nice leading line, and with the building that provides cross diagonals. I thought the exposure range was well handled, but and black and white a good choice, but bald skies, they just don't always suit well in a photograph. Sometimes you're better off concentrating on details if the world is giving you a diffuser up there. All right, next.
Okay, we're going on
Eights.
to the eights now. Our first one is Kansas Schoolhouse at Dusk, and the photographer is Jane Newmiller Bustad.
All right, I like that the photographer kept the horizon low and the tree leans towards the main subject. In this case, I enjoy the extra sky, and another judge may say differently, but it gave me a more of a sense of the isolation. What I would have liked to have the photographer do is walk around to the right so that there's more of a relational element. If that tree hadn't been leaning towards the schoolhouse, it would have looked too much like two separate photos. Had the photographer just circled around to the right, they would have optically seemed closer than they actually are. Right, next.
Our next image is Old Chevy Truck, and that
Okay.
is by Ken Wolter.
All right, it's great texture, brought out the colors, there's good contrast. Um, the only thing that kept it from going even higher is I thought you could either include all of the next bumper down so that there's 3 diagonal elements with the Chevrolet, or just get rid of it. Was sort of like chopping off a knee. There might be something in the way, and that's fine, but I really felt they were a little bit stronger, but it was definitely well worth an acceptance.
Okay. Painted Truck is by Melissa Anderson.
All right. I like that the technique has picked up colors for the overlay that are already present in the truck and the gas pump. I enjoyed the truck and the pump being connected. It tells a whole story. The overlay probably deals with a lot of busy background and smooths it out. I would have liked to have seen more. It felt a little crowded on the left, along the edge by the gas pump. I think I would have liked to have seen a little more room there. All right, next.
Moving to the 9s,
Nines.
we have Autumn Crib, J. Olson Goody.
There's a lot of triangles in this image, and that really always draws the eye in. You've got the triangle of the foreground yellow soybeans, and then you've got the triangle of the roof shape with the crib, and some other triangles that you can find in and out of it to give a sense of depth. There's a volunteer broom corn growing up on a third line, so that lines up on the building, which is on the other third line, and just gives a sense of depth to the image. I did feel the peak of the roof was a little bit crowded. That there might be more there, but if there isn't, you could expand the canvas and then use the marquee selection tool to select the grass and the canvas, and then under edit content aware fill, it'll fill in grass so you have more. I've done that on some images that I thought I had made it a little too crowded at the edge, and that helped. Next.
Okay, we have Edison Laboratory by Dennis Kroll.
All right, there's a complex light range that I think is handled pretty well. There's a nice leading line to a vanishing point. The window isn't pulling me out completely because you've got the bright overhead lights circling around. And then there is the fan part way back as a place to stop the eye. I thought it in black and white suited the image quite well. Thought it could be quite a bit stronger if you had a reenactor or some kind of a model in a lab coat sitting at the stool by that fan, tinkering away at something. It would have given me an even better place to stop the eye than the fan alone. Next.
Okay, we have Monterey Bay Shipwreck by Ken Wolter.
All right, again, beautiful light. The ship is well placed in the image. Everything is well exposed. I like that the clouds in the sky mirror the wave patterns on the flats with the tide having gone out. It was just a very enjoyable image. The horizon is kept low enough that it's not centered. I thought that having the water smooth would make it even the mood even more poignant. And that can be accomplished with just a really slow shutter speed, like 30 seconds will make that water totally smooth. That might lead to the flag blowing. So you might have to do a combination of images, or the clouds might move too much on you. But I thought this was very well done. Next.
On to the 10s, we'll start with 108 Years Old by Ricky Van Dyke.
Pretty much everything on this is working together. The way the hands are crossed is giving a diagonal L shape, so they're not two separate hands. The side lighting is pulling out the texture in the skin and the bruising that comes along at that age. The bright light on the ring is giving my eye a place to rest. The blue of the clothing or blanket that she has on her legs contrasts nicely with when skin gets yellowed with age, and there's nothing distracting in the background. The photographer went a little bit back from the wrist so that she's not like chopped off at the wrist, and the frame is just filled nicely. Next.
Next we have Remembering Dad by Terry Butler.
Okay. I didn't know that one. I marked it lower, really. No, this was just very well done. I'm just yanking Terry's chain. I enjoyed the nice sideline. You got 3 elements, but they're all interconnected. They tell the full story. The side lighting comes in and provides light all the way around as far as you can see the edge of the felt brim and along all the gloves, that the angle keeps the glass from glaring back. And I'm pretty sure the photographer would not have dared to take the glass out, because this looks like one of those images where it's actually done with pastels. And if you take it off, it can actually fall apart with the pastels running away. Everything came together. I liked the background. It was complementary, possibly a little less space on the left or the top, but everything just came together nicely. The glove color matched the frame color. The hat color matched some of the colors in the portrait. Next. Oh, and depth of field. You can read the fog on the hat all the way back to the person in the picture. All right, next.
Okay, Sunday Sleigh Ride by Mary Ann Jerks.
All right. Well, this had everything. It not only had the old, it had a really great composition. I immediately started in my head singing Over the River and Through the Woods in my mind. Everything is sharp where it needs to be, from the front of the horse to past their faces. The snow is well exposed, and you got enough trees to anchor it. It doesn't seem like they're floating in space. And then, of course, the wonderful old costumes they have in the original sleigh. You kept a shot where all of the horse's legs are visible. And there's also a diagonal leading line going along. And then the crop is almost angled with the horse's head. And the horse's eye is actually visible with a small catchlight despite the blinders. Everything just came together. Even the blanket behind them matches the harnessing on the horse. All right.
Moving on to the creative category, we'll start with the 6s, and the first one is Fern number 4.
I felt the arrangement of the fronds does give movement to the image, and it might work really well as a backdrop. I wasn't as in favor of it as a standalone image. It was a little bit too out there with the coloration. Maybe it'd been better without the reds and just the yellows and blues, and maybe not so much of a gray background. All right, next.
Next is Orchard Truck.
The dreaminess is nicely done. It just felt crowded to the right and the front. I just felt you didn't need all of that fence line to lead the eye towards the truck if you just gotten some more of the hedge. And so it didn't feel like it was all crowded to one side of the frame. Next.
River Otter.
I really enjoyed the effect on the otter. It was far less successful on feet, tail, whatever that is there. It would have needed to be toned back quite a bit. If I block it out, it's really a great image. So if you want to maybe just clone that part out and just stick with the head, it is really nice. You got beautiful catch light. Fur normally does very well with this smudging technique. It just was a lot less successful. It looked a little bit more like the poor thing was giving me the finger on the back end. So I would suggest, maybe trying it without that, because the effect on the otter's head itself was gorgeous. All right, next.
Next is spring buds.
There is a faint dreaminess to the image, so that does qualify as creative. I enjoyed the zigzag of the red buds, but they stop halfway through the frame. And I just felt it lacked a focal point. If they were going to stop, it needed to lead me to something. They zigzag down and there's nothing there except a little bit of debris on the ground. I just thought it needed something more for my eye in that open area towards the bottom middle. Just a person, a thing, anything, just something else to add to it.
Okay, this is Tuma Kakari, number 1.
The subject is well placed in the lower left. And I enjoyed the colors on the foreground and background, but when it got to the building walls, the effect really overwhelmed the openings. So I would have liked to have seen it pulled back a little bit there, so you had a little more of the building structure. All right, next.
Next is Heron Portrait, starting the 7th. Sorry about that.
Yep. And yeah, this was one that I had to look for nitpicky things, because in creative there weren't that many entries, so I wasn't allowed very many in the acceptances. I really like this effect. It was very effective. I like the composition in the first place. The heron is low. It has room to look into. It's being framed by the bush, and it has that log leading in. The one nitpicky thing that I decided was those bright white spots in the water, and the tan areas coming down from the top center, and the bright green coming from the lower border. It'd be a fair amount of work to clone those out, but I think it would be even stronger image if you at least darkened them, if not cloning them out. But certainly that white hot spot below the heron's beard would be helpful. I just had to find nitpicky things because everything was beautiful. All right, next.
Okay, we've got Pretty in Purple.
Again, another beautiful item. Again, smudging works well with flowers as well as fur. I like the square crop. I like the effect. It's not as clear right now, but if you let your eyes adjust, you can figure out that the background is not quite black. It's more of a purpley black. And I also like how the stem is coming in and the iris is swirling around in a C curve. It's just maybe it felt like it had too much room on the left and not enough on the right, but I did like that you had the stem coming in low. All right, next.
Okay, next is Out Lily.
This was a nice breakout. I like that most of it was black and white with just the lily head and stamens in color. For the most part, I liked the framing around that was done with the breakout. But when it's sort of got you can't really see where the edge of the frame is and the white of the webinar background. You sort of just lose it. And when I was looking in preview, it was even more obvious. I would have liked to have seen a similar top as there is on the bottom to define that edge a little bit more. All right, next. Oh, good. I don't have to
Moving on to the
nitpicking.
8th now. We have creative category, Ring of Fire by Fred Sabatka.
Yes, this was an example. They may have done some additional things, but most of the creativity was probably done in camera. And they managed to get it really framing her eyes. One ring almost obscures the iris, but not quite. And the fire is just going around, and the square in a circular composition. Those eyes are just piercing. You've got the L composition with her face and her arm, and then whether the sparks came that way on the camera or they were added later, they just added a nice touch and an extra circular ring. And I just want to go in and in and in and in until I reach the eyes. Well done.
Okay, we're going to the 9s. The 9s is Grizzly in the Snow by Melissa Anderson.
Again, this is another beautiful composition. The eyes, even though they're shadowed, have a catch light. The snow is well made. The background colors suit the bear really well. They're muted, and the bear's coloration is muted. I like the panoramic feel of the crop. It gives the bear room to move into it. And the snow around the face is just a very nice touch. Could have used maybe a little more depth on the bear, but otherwise it was just really nicely done.
Okay, Water Lily Reflection by Marianne Jerk.
Again, great composition. The lily and reflection together just fill the frame. The stem coming, I'm gesturing with my hands like you can all see what I'm doing. All right, and I like the complementary color for the background. That green makes the pinks and purples of the lily and reflection pop well. It just worked together really nicely. Next.
On to the 10s. We've got Basketball Whirlwind by Betty Bryan.
Oh, this one stood out right away. I knew that was probably going to be the top image. It is just gorgeous in its simplicity. You've isolated the character with this ball. You're still saying something about the age of COVID, but you've got his eye in there. Limbs are all at a good placement. There's a little bit movement in the hands and ball to show that he's in motion. Same with the shoes. And then this gorgeous background picking up from the colors, whether or not they swirled him to get it or in another way, the cyclone whirling around, it was just lovely. It also reminded me of a Oriental painting, how they do something with just a few strokes and give you the essence.
Okay, on to the nature category. We'll start with the 6s. And our first image is called Four Tenors.
All right, the depth of field is good. All the main subjects are sharp pretty much through most of their heads, and then the background goes off. The difficulty is and I've been trying. I tried all this winter. I had to give up because they just wouldn't cooperate. But you've got a merger with the two swans on the left where the heads are overlapping, and trying to get them so all heads are showing. You've got all legs showing, but it's really challenging. Keep at it though. I'm going to keep at it. Right, next.
This one is called Spring Forward.
This is good contrast. It has the green against the blue. I just felt it needed more depth of field because some of the snow crystals are just not sharp enough, especially on the one lower center that's coming towards the viewer. A lot of times in macro work, you really want the thing that's closest to the viewer to be sharp. So a little more depth of field would have gotten that. Next.
Okay, now we have Hoary Night.
Again, this had great contrast. I like that the shutter speed was such that you got the rim lighting all around the hoar frost on the branches. I did like that the moon was centered because this gives you this, it goes with the circular composition. But as I've said before, what often suits a circular composition is a square crop. And when I take off from the right and left and give it a square crop, then I've got the branches leading in and the ice lines leading in, and then everything leading into the moon, and then that one branch crossing. It just keeps me going round and round. Whereas I don't really feel it's necessary to have the stuff off to the right and left. Right, next.
Next image is Hedon's Heart.
The photographer did a great job with the lighting and the shutter speed. There's good exposure. The water is slow down and nice and soft. I like the diagonal running from the top right to the lower left. I would love to get a long pole and shove that log further into the falls. I curse at things like that when I'm trying to take pictures too, because that log is leading me out the bottom of the frame, and I love the coloring on it, but it is just coming out, and you know, sometimes it's not safe enough to get a different angle, and it can be frustrating. But otherwise, it's a very enjoyable image. It's just my eye doesn't stay in it. Next.
Okay, Leopard and Serengeti Tree.
Again, this is one that had to come down because I wasn't allowed to have very many in the acceptances. I enjoyed how the image is framed. I like that the leopard is zeroing in right at the photographer and is low in the frame. Two things that I thought could have brought it out more is first selecting the sky and bringing out the pale colors that are there a little more. And because there are many striations in the sky, but it's not really coming out, it's looking more blank. And then I would have liked to have seen the photographer also do some dodging on the leopard, especially the eyes. That would really draw you in, I feel. Next.
Okay, on to the 8th. We'll start with Long-billed Thrasher.
All right. There's great bokeh in this. Everything that needs to be sharp is sharp, and the background is nicely blurred out. There's a catchlight in the thrasher's eye, and there's a diagonal going from upper right to lower left, with the left branch framing. Excuse me. I think you could crop a little bit off the right so that you had all upright branches framing the bird rather than that one off to the left. Or I'm sorry, one going horizontally to the right. That I thought might make it even stronger. But it's a very wonderful image as is.
And that was by Melissa Anderson.
Yes, I apologize for missing the name on that. Next we have the 10, Gull with Lunch by Don Specht.
I think this probably says it all. Again, the background is done nicely, even if it had to be done in post. It's nice. There's a little bit of blurriness in the wings to give movement. The fish and the wings make an S curve going through the image, and that's further exaggerated by the water coming off the tail. There's a catchlight in the gull's eyes. I just thought the main subject is low in the frame, but it also fills the frame. Everything just came together for this. The lighting, everything was perfect.
All right, moving on to pictorial, we'll start with desert sunrise.
All right, I like the rainbow layers. I thought having that striation going back and forth was really nice. I really like the cool clouds. I believe those are called memory clouds. I would have liked to have seen the photographer tilt the camera up and include more of that gorgeous sky. You could tilt it up to maybe just where so that you don't have maybe half of that foreground or maybe a third of the foreground in it and just get an equal amount of sky. You'd still have the different striations leading through the image, but I just would have liked to have seen more of those clouds. All right, next.
Okay, next is out together.
Okay, positives, there are three, and there's great bokeh, and they're well placed together. The light on the female especially is really nice. You know, the men are being butt heads there and not showing their faces. I would have liked to have, hopefully at some point, they turned all of them facing a profile. Right now, they're just giving us butt ends up. But I really like the catch light in the female's eyes. Okay.
The next one is called succulents.
It has a very tactile feel to it. I really enjoyed that. There are 5 main succulents, if you were framed in this. I just felt it needed a stronger element to break the pattern. If one of them had been considerably brighter than the other, if you'd waited for like a little bug or something to have a resting point in the pattern. Either that, you could brighten up that upper right one more and mute the one. Right now, there seems like there's 2 competing subjects to me.
Okay, the sevens, starting with boys will be boys.
And again, I wasn't allowed all that many acceptances, but I loved the picture. I thought the idea was great. I thought the lighting on the boy was great. And, well, what held it back a little bit for me is the frog is just sort of planted there. I would have liked to have seen the photographer feather that frog a little bit and get it down on the lily pad a little bit more rather than just seeming like it's levitating in midair. Next.
Okay, breaking the rules at Silver City.
They think they broke the rules, but they didn't entirely, really, because the sunset is the third element. So you've got the 2 rocks and the clouds leading you into the sunset. Reflections are the one time you can really get away with the horizon across the center. And the lighting was very good. This probably was a 25-30 second shutter speed to get that nice smooth water. It was just a little bit hot on the clouds where the sun is the brightest. I would have liked to have seen the photographer do possibly an extra exposure for the sky to get that a little bit better. Next.
Fishing shack at Aransas Bay.
All right, again, the photographer kept the horizon nice and low. There are no blown highlights. The shack is placed in a lower third. The shoreline has an S curve that echoes the S curve of the clouds to frame it. Excuse me. I just could wish for either the door ajar, a light inside, somebody on the dock. I just wanted one more element to give it that extra oomph to push it up into the acceptances. Next.
Ground cherries.
Oh, this was one that was very reluctantly moved down just because I had too many. I really enjoyed the backlighting on this image. I liked that the tabletop was not too high up. It's not dividing the image in half. I could have wished for just a little bit more depth on the cherry and itself, and some of the veining are a little soft, and I think it would be even greater if that was all in the depth of field. Next.
St. Mary's Chapel.
This has wonderful symmetry. Everything is perfect and you've got the triangles, the pipes, the cross, the backlight is lovely. It's just kind of falling backwards, and it could use a little more depth because the cross and the organ pipes are sharp, but it falls off at the stained glass. Next.
The Lake at Sunset.
Yes, I enjoyed this. You have the three bolts, and they're anchored at S curves leading me in. I really think the moon was a nice touch to give yet another element to keep my eye moving. I dislike that we lost the top of the mast, even though I do enjoy what's going on in the water. I think you'd either have to get the whole mast in or the whole reflection in, one of the two. And that would also keep your horizon from being too centered. Right, next.
Okay, we're moving on to the 8th, and we'll start with 4 Generations by Kelly Perry.
This was a wonderful idea. Photographing each one holding as it goes up. Black and white was a good choice because many of these photos, they might have had clothing that didn't complement or backgrounds that didn't complement. And by going black and white, that brought that out nicely. I would have liked to have seen a little more light bounced into the left half of Great Grandma's face. That would have mitigated that shadow. Made it a little softer yet, or move her further away from the backdrop so it falls more softly. But otherwise, I thought this was very clever.
And this one is called Sunset Starburst by Jane Newmiller Bustad.
Yeah, this had a perfect aperture to get the starburst as the sun goes down. I enjoyed the zig light backlighting on the grasses and the edges of the hills and the multiple triangles that go through. I just felt for a salon it could have a little bit less at the top, but of course the copy editor will love that, or an advertiser. But the lighting was very well done, and I enjoyed that symmetry of actually placing it center, but low center. Right, next.
On to the 9s, and we'll start with Freezing Bubbles by Kelly Perry.
Well, this turned out to be a very lovely look. I enjoyed the background. I liked the leading line of the bubbles. I liked all the frost going on it. I even enjoyed the source of the light coming down, but you could have diffused that light and still got without the glow, without as much of a hot spot, or otherwise I might have pushed it even higher on the score.
Next is Qualifying Run at Buck Hill by Mick Richards.
Again, the eyes make this shot. If you hadn't been able to see his eyes through that, it wouldn't have been nearly as compelling. The flag gives an idea of that he is doing a downhill slalom race, and I enjoy that he is leaning into it. You've got both poles showing and good contrast, or good eye contact leading into the image. What I would have liked is the snow being white instead of gray, and that just means adjusting your color balance or brightening it up a little bit. You could still correct that in Photoshop. In the field, what I do is meter on the snow and shoot manually with my meter set at +1.5. And that will keep the meter from looking at all those dark colors on him, or the bright snow, and saying, we need to tone this down and make it look gray. We don't want snow that looks gray. Okay, next.
Next is We Are the Champions by Betty Bryan.
And again, this has a nice following line. Everything in the picture, it's a great photojournalism shot. It really sets the scene. I think the young man behind the guy holding the trophy really makes the shot. This would have gone 1 point higher if the photographer had just straightened the horizontal elements, as it's just tilted. And you've got room to do that. That way you wouldn't feel like the basketball is about to roll off the table and stuff like that. Otherwise, everything was very well done. It came together wonderfully.
Okay, and finally our 10 is Split Rock West Branch Falls by Steve Foster.
All right. Again, everything is well handled. You've got dark details along the tree in the foreground, yet the falls aren't too blown out. That rock in the middle of the pool in the front, all that's sharp, and the falls are acceptably sharp. And that rock gives me a resting place. And then I want to follow the S curve through the rocks with the trees framing the falls, and you get up to follow the falls to the top and then across to the trees and back down. And there's no blank sky up above. The trees are just covering it. And whether you use multiple exposures or not, you manage to handle the dappled sunlight very nicely. And it all worked out very well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Linda, for your thoughtful comments. I really appreciate the effort you put into tonight's meeting.
Yeah, it's easier to score them. It's the critiquing that takes all the time to write enough notes that I remember what I want to say. There were a lot of really strong images.
Yes, congratulations to everybody, and thank you for participating.
I agree. I told Linda when I heard that she was our judge that I always get really good feedback about when she judges for us, and I just think she does a wonderful job.
Thank you. Hope nobody's too bitterly
And
disappointed. Like I said, the only fives, I just thought they were pushing the old envelope a
I
little
think I'll
far.
recording here.
Okay.